Welcome, and thank you for joining us tonight for our 2021 Jewish Federation of Sarasota-Manatee County Community Lecture. My name is Dr. Eric Pressman, and along with my wife, Dr. Kate Pressman, we are proud to co-chair this incredible event. This year, we searched for speakers who would both uplift and acknowledge the difficulty of the year we've all collectively experienced. We are confident that our guest, Eli Beer, will provide that for you. I especially want to thank our sponsors for this program, Stephen R. Kalt and Robert D. Hareen. Without our generous donors to the Federation, programs such as this would not be possible. The Jewish Federation of Sarasota-Manatee's mission is to strengthen Jewish life and identity in our community, provide for Jewish people in need, and promote support for Israel. We are thrilled to provide our community with this year's community lecture, virtually, of course. Eli comes to us live from Israel, and he shares his story. Please keep in mind that Israel is a profoundly important aspect of the work that we do here. Your Jewish Federation of Sarasota-Manatee has a long-standing commitment to education and support of our ancestral homeland. We are dedicated to sharing this history and future of Israel with our youth through PJ Library, the Shapiro Teen Engagement Program, and the Bob Malkin Young Ambassadors Experience, along with our interfaith community through the Heller CRC's Interfaith Community Missions to Israel, and our young moms and dads through Momentum Israel Experience and Trip. We fulfill our mission by supporting programs and projects that care for the vulnerable in Sarasota-Manatee, in Israel, and around the world. We build community through strong relationships with partners in education, cultural arts, social services, and area nonprofits. I am extremely proud of the work that our Federation does in our local community and to address issues that benefit everyone. Through funds raised for Federation's Stronger Together campaign for coronavirus relief, we have granted more than $285,000 to 15 organizations in our Jewish community providing services for spiritual and physical well-being and food security. Additional grants will be distributed in 2021. We are a major sponsor of the All Faiths Food Bank's campaign against summer hunger. We work closely with Embracing Our Differences to help teach thousands of children the importance of respecting diversity through art and education and through the Jewish Healing Program at JFCS and our Federation funds programs to meet the social and economic needs of our most vulnerable populations, including many Holocaust survivors. We have also sponsored and supported a great number of projects to enhance the lives of seniors living at Aviva, a campus for senior life, who because of the pandemic saw their daily lives so terribly disrupted. These are just a few of the ways our Federation impacts the local, national, and international community. And now on tonight's program, featuring the incredible Eli Beer. Eli is a social entrepreneur and president and founder of the United Hatzalah of Israel. After witnessing a bus bombing in Jerusalem as he was walking home from school at the age of 6, Eli was inspired by his traumatic experience to pursue a career that would allow him to save lives. Eli became a certified EMT at 15 and began volunteering on an ambulance in order to follow his life's mission. What he found, though, was that when someone needed fast medical attention, unfortunately, the ambulance was unable to arrive in time due to traffic, congestion, and the distance from which the ambulance was dispatched. What came out of this experience was United Hatzalah, a life-saving organization that works with the Israeli Emergency Rescue Dispatch by sending volunteers on ambucycles to triage patients before the ambulance can arrive. Oftentimes, they end up saving lives before the ambulance even shows up. For his tireless work, Eli has received various recognitions and awards. This includes being named as Social Entrepreneur of the Year in Israel by the Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship in 2010, receiving the Israel President Prize in 2011 by President Shimon Peres for innovation and volunteering, becoming World Economic Forum Young Global Leader in 2012, selected by Queen Rania of Jordan, and being awarded the Victor J. Goldberg II Prize for Peace in the Middle East in 2013. When Eli is not traveling around the world fundraising for United Hatzalah, he lives in Jerusalem with his wife Giddy and 5 children, some of whom are also EMT volunteers.
The following video is about a guy, who is the fastest to save your life. But first, let me tell you what the problem is. Imagine you're in a remote area. You get a heart attack and you call an ambulance. For that ambulance to get to you, it has to drive all the way through traffic and narrow streets. And by the time it gets there, you are dead. This is how millions of people die every year. Ambulances are just not fast enough, and that is scary. Then I met this guy.
Hi, my name is Eli Beer.
This guy found a unique way to solve the ambulance problem. Here is how. It's very simple. The ambulance is too big, so Eli used a motorcycle and called it an ambucycle. Instead of employees, Eli found volunteers, regular people just like you and me, the teacher, the engineer, and the student. He trained them for months, gave them medical supplies and an ambucycle.
Drive carefully.
And he let them go back to their normal life. And every time someone calls for help, his technology finds the closest volunteer that can help.
Think of it like Uber, but this is for free and we save lives.
They drop whatever they're doing, arrive on the scene, and give medical care until the big ambulance shows up. This is how the difference between life and death looks like.
The first 3 minutes are the most important to save a life.
Eli's system is so fast that any phone call is answered in 3 seconds or less. And show up in 3 minutes or less.
And in most cases, we show up in 90 seconds or less.
So by the time you spent watching this video, someone is already at your house saving your life. This is the fastest medical emergency service in the world. And the cheapest, because it's entirely free.
By the way, our team is 5,000 volunteers and it's all sponsored by donations.
It's an organization that's 100% politics free, 100% cost free, 100% amazing, and 100%
Human.
people of different backgrounds volunteer to join Eli's team of medics. The Jews, the Muslims, the Christians, and everyone else.
I love the fact that I'm sitting here in United Hatzalah in between an ultra-Orthodox Jew and a Muslim.
All of them dedicated their time to save others regardless of religion or race.
Hello, how are you? Shalom, shalom.
And overall, they saved over 3.5 million people.
When my own father had a heart attack, the first volunteer who came to save him was a Muslim volunteer who was nearby, and my father is Jewish.
My dad got a heart attack. The first person to help the fastest response was from a Jewish volunteer, and my dad is a Muslim.
What you're looking at is a group of people who came together under one organization called United Hatzalah to rise above politics, above money, above race, above religion, just to save lives.
And now, please help me welcome Eli Beer.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Eli Beer. I am now in Jerusalem, Israel. It's now 2:15, and I'm really excited, 2:15 a.m., to be part of this beautiful evening. And I really wished it was in person, but I'm here in Jerusalem live. So I just want to share my story to all of you at the Federation of Sarasota-Manatee. And just tell you a little of what I went through in my life. I really, I was introduced and a little of the story was told. And thank you for introducing me this way. But I grew up in Jerusalem. My parents made Aliyah from New York, 1969. And I was born in Israel, 1973, right before the Yom Kippur War. And I found myself in my first 2 weeks of my life my first month of my life in a bomb shelter in Jerusalem. Of course, I don't remember anything from those days, but growing up in Jerusalem was I had a beautiful family, really loving. But when I was 6 years old, I went to school with my older brother on a Friday afternoon, coming back from school, passing by the bus stop, and seeing the bus coming towards the bus stop. And when the bus stopped, right there, it blew up. This was the first bomb attack on a bus in Israel. And it was 1978. It was a Friday afternoon. It was summertime, and really a lot of people were injured. And I remember this screaming and yelling of people, just they needed help, and they needed people to help them stop their bleeding, and people that needed help just to get up. They couldn't get up, and we were scared. We ran away. But I remember taxis that showed up, and they were taking people inside the back of their taxis, just pulling them in and running out to the hospitals with them. I grew up understanding that everything we went through in Israel was really to just scare us, and our enemies did not like the fact that we were there. And I really fell in love with Israel those days, after this incident. And my parents were just telling me, we have to be strong. And I lived with the trauma of what I saw, but I decided, though, when I was a child, that one day I want to grow up and save lives. I was very pulled into that I hope one day I will be part of a life-saving mission in Israel. So when I was almost 15, I saw that opportunity when during the summer they had a course, an EMT course, an emergency medical technician course, to join an ambulance. That was a short course. It was 44 hours, but they schlepped it over like 3 weeks. And a lot of activity, and was for young kids. And right, in Israel, before the army, you go into volunteering in different. You have hospitals you can volunteer in, and different beautiful activities. So I choose the life-saving activity, going to volunteer in an ambulance. And it was amazing. It was incredible. When I finished the course, I learned how to do CPR and stop bleeding and everything else. And I was in the back of an ambulance. I found myself in front of emergencies, helping people. And I started writing down all the emergencies that I went to, and the times that we received the emergency and the time that we got there. And I realized our average response time was 17 minutes. And then when we started counting the lives that we saved, we didn't see anyone that actually was in a life-threatening emergency, like that someone who stopped breathing. I remember we had a heart attack of a lady, and we were responding to that heart attack. And by the time we got there, we did CPR. We tried saving that lady, but we couldn't do anything. And this lady passed away. And I was very bothered by that. Why couldn't we save this lady? And then we had another very bad accident. Someone was hit by a car, and we were trying to save that person. We couldn't save that person. And this went on for a year and a half, helping people that were really grateful when we came, but they were able to wait a little more. They had no problem. But the people who were not breathing or had no pulse, people had a cardiac arrest, by the time we got there, it was too late. The traffic was bad. The distance was, we'd had to travel too long for saving them. Average response time was 17 minutes. It was too long to save people. And then a year and a half after he started volunteering, we had a very bad incident of a 7-year-old boy who choked on a hot dog while he was eating lunch. His mother, this was in Jerusalem, his mother called for help. She called an ambulance, and we were in the back of the ambulance the driver was trying to get there on time, and we were going from the one side of the city, from Mount Scopus in Jerusalem, to the other side of the city, next to the Yad Vashem Center in Beit Vegan. By the time we got there, it was 21 minutes after the mother called for help. And we heard the screaming and yelling of the mother from the top floor of a building. We ran inside the building with the medical equipment we had, and we tried saving this child while we were crying ourselves, because we knew the chances of saving this kid was very, very low. And a doctor who who passed by the ambulance with his dog. He was walking his dog and he saw the ambulance there. He ran into the home and he asked us he told us he's a doctor from emergency room and he wanted to help us. And of course he joined our efforts to save him and he took control. And after about 30 minutes of working on this child, he said there was nothing we could do, just bring a sheet to cover him. This was like the worst moment of my life. I was 16 and a half years old, a year and a half in the back of an ambulance. And I never experienced such a terrible tragedy of a 7-year-old boy dying while he was waiting for us to save him. And it took us over 20 minutes to arrive. And that's when I realized this doctor, who I asked him, where does he live? And he said, he just lives a block away. And I asked him, you didn't know that this kid was choking? He said, no, I did not know. And I realized something is wrong with the system. The ambulance system is very important. You need to transport people to the hospital, but it's very hard to save lives with a system that doesn't get there fast enough. I realized that if you get there in the first 90 seconds of every emergency, we will save lives. If we get there in 15, 17 minutes, or even 10 minutes, that's not good enough for saving someone. If someone is not breathing, you need to get there in the first 2 minutes before brain damage starts, before irreversible damages start for internal organs. And I said to my friends, I was devastated. I said, I'm leaving. I'm not going to continue volunteering for an ambulance anymore. We can't save lives in ambulance. Ambulances are good for transport, but not good enough for saving people. So my friends, they said, why are you giving up? I said, I'm a year and a half in the back of an ambulance. I didn't even save one person. And then I thought about, why don't we get a doctor like that doctor and other people like me and my friends to respond to emergency before ambulances? Why don't we get people everywhere and just every time they have an emergency to just respond to that emergency and get there fast enough so by the time the ambulance arrives, they could just continue the work and take the person alive to the hospital. And all my friends love the idea. So I decided to go to the ambulance organization that I volunteered in and offer this great idea. Let's respond to emergencies before ambulances. Well, Israel, whoever knows a little about Israel, you have a lot of bureaucracy here and a lot of Jews here. Everyone thinks they're smarter than each other and then the other. And they didn't like the idea. They said, what is this 16-year-old kid coming over and giving us this crazy idea? Insurance and, liability and other things. They said, no, we're not interested. If someone calls for help, you must get an ambulance. So I decided I'm not giving up my dream. I want to save lives. I'm going to do everything possible to do this. And I decided to use Israel's best innovation ever, called chutzpah. That's how we build this country. And I said, if the emergency calls routed to us somehow, we will know about anything happening nearby us. So we'll just run there and save people. So I decided to use my bar mitzvah money. I had all my money saved. Of people who gave me gifts for my bar mitzvah, it was all saved. I said, you know what? I'm just going to buy in Radio Shack these scanners, these walkie-talkie scanners, these police scanners that you could actually tap into the ambulance system. And I started, literally then, after I got these scanners, I tapped into the emergency of the ambulances and I heard all their emergency calls routed to the ambulances. They were, that's how they let the ambulance drivers know where to go. So we actually used the chutzpah to hear about every emergency nearby us. And it was incredible. We were just a group of young people, young volunteers with a lot of passion to save people. And we just started running to emergencies. And the first emergency that I actually responded to was a man who was on his 70s who was hit by a car. And he was a block away from the place I was by my father's bookshop in Jerusalem. He owned the bookshop and I was working there, helping him out. And I just ran there. And I had no medical supplies on me. I had zero medical supplies. And when I got there, I was holding a walkie-talkie in my hand, and I I see people surrounding this person, and I say, I'm an EMT, I want to help him, and they all move aside, and I reach out, and I see he's bleeding terribly from his neck, and I said I must stop his bleeding, but no one had anything I could stop the bleeding with, so I used my yarmulke on my head, and I took it and I folded it, and I actually stopped his bleeding with my yarmulke, and I used my yarmulke. I just took it off. And I folded it. I just used it as a tourniquet, and I waited for an ambulance to come. And eventually, when the ambulance arrived, they took this person to the hospital. And I wasn't sure if he's going to make it. And then 2 days later, I get a phone call. Someone says, "Are you Eli Beer?" I said, "Yes." And he called my home, and he said, "Are you the kid who treated someone on the street, Happy Scott Street?" I said, "Yes." He said, "My father was the one who he treated." And I was sure he's going to say my father to make it. And he says, "My father woke up this morning in Hadassah Hospital. And we want to thank you for saving his life." And I can't even explain the feeling I had that moment. It was the best feeling I ever felt. You know, getting a phone call, you just saved someone's life. So I went to visit him in the hospital, and he was with his family. And I came over there, and I said my name, and they said, "Are you the kid?" I said, "Yes." This man asked me to come over, and he gave me this incredible hug, and he said, "Thank you for saving my life." And when he did that, I saw a number on his hand. He had a number right here, just on his hand. He had a number, and I realized this man is a Holocaust survivor. And my life changed that moment, knowing that I saved someone's life, just stopping his bleeding. And a doctor comes into the room, and he says to me, "Are you the boy who saved? This man?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, you should just know he was on Coumadine, which is a blood thinner, and if it wasn't for your act stopping his bleeding, he would have been dead in a few minutes." That moment was the best moment in life. The doctor told me I saved that person's life. And I didn't do much. I just did stop his bleeding. And then he says, "I heard you use your yarmulke." He said, "Next time you should use real bandages if you want to really do a good job." And I said, "You know what? I have some money left from my bar mitzvah. I'm going to go buy some bandages." And that's how we started this organization. We were 15 volunteers. We were passionate about saving people. And it was incredible. It was an amazing feeling to help people and get there fast enough. And I told my friends, my mission is getting there in 90 seconds. And my friend said, "How are you going to get there in 90 seconds?" I said, "If we have enough people spread all around, everywhere in our neighborhood, whenever we have an emergency call, we hear on that walkie-talkie, we're just going to run there and be there in 90 seconds. And then we said, what about the neighborhood next door to us? And we said, okay, let's get some people there. We started recruiting people there in the neighborhood next to us there, and just went from one neighborhood to another and just spread like fire. And more neighborhoods started joining us. And it was the best feeling in the world to meet people I never knew before. And one day we come up with this idea. We say, you know what? We used to see these pizza delivery motorcycles, young Israelis driving these motorcycles to get a good tip. You need to get there in time while the pizza is still hot. And you could call an ambulance. You get an ambulance, you get a pizza and a pizza the same time, and you get the pizza first. And I said, you know what? These people come so quick because they have these delivery, motorcycles that they don't have to get stuck in traffic. Why don't we build these motorcycles and make them ambulances and call them ambucycles? And everyone loved the idea. I said, we'll put a medical equipment in the back. We'll put a defibrillator in the back. We'll put everything we need in the back of the ambucycle. We'll allocate it to specific volunteers. So this way they can always be on call with it. And wherever they are, they go to work, they go to school, they go to whatever they do, they always with the ambucycle. So we can always be on call. And this way we could be 24/7 available to save people. And that's how we started with 15 volunteers and a couple of ambucycles. I got some friends to donate these ambucycles, family members. And I told my friends, these ambicycles, we could put the name of your father, your grandfather, like a building, like an ambulance. It's just an ambicycle. And people thought, a motorcycle? What are you talking about? No Jewish mother ever liked motorcycles. It was very hard for me to convince them, these Jewish mothers, that motorcycles are a good thing. And they all were against it, but once I explained them that if we have these motorcycles, we're going to get there faster, slowly they got convinced, and they started donating these ambicycles, these motorcycles, and we started building them. And I can tell you that it made the whole big difference between getting there and helping someone or getting there and saving someone. Because we tried helping to people. If you don't get there in time, it's not going to, you could be the best paramedic in the world, the best doctor in the world. But if you don't get there fast enough, it's not going to be, you can't reverse time when it comes to life saving. So we started growing rapidly around the country. But I realized something very interesting, that we were all Orthodox, modern Orthodox, or very Orthodox volunteers, because we started in Jerusalem in a small neighborhood of Orthodox community. And I said, I really want to get to 90 seconds everywhere in the country. I started small with a division of my neighborhood secured, because I was living in a small neighborhood. It was easy to do it. But once we started growing, I said, I want to get these people who are people I don't know, people out of my community in other places, like Tel Aviv and Hatzalah and other places, Ra'anana. And I started going from city to city, telling people about this idea. And I felt like a missionary, like I'm building a new religion, like Jesus, like I'm walking around the country and talking about 90-second response. And people thought I'm crazy. People said, are you Meshuggah? What are you talking about 90-second response? How are you going to get there in 90 seconds? And it's very hard to explain it to people 30 years ago, 25 years ago. Today it's easy because you have Uber. You press Uber or Lyft, and within 2 minutes you have someone next to your home, because you're using the power of network, of the power of people, of using people everywhere. Like, whenever someone is in need of transport, you always have someone nearby who could take you somewhere. And that's what we did 30 years ago, creating this network of volunteers. And I told people about this, and people loved it. And people said, I'm in. And we got from 15 volunteers to started having hundreds of volunteers. And it was a beautiful thing to see secular Jews in Israel, connecting with religious Jews in Israel, and the love that created in between them. And we were all in love with the mission of saving lives. And it was very, very easy to fall in love, because once you save the person's life, like I saved that man who was hit by a car, and it was another person. It's like addiction. It's like you get addicted. You want to do more. So we started recruiting more and more people. But then one day I get a phone call, and we had over 1,000 volunteers already. And one day I get a phone call from a man. His name is Murad, and I knew Murad is an Arab name. And he said, I'm here on the phone. I'm here with my friend Muhammad. We want to come visit you. Muhammad Asli. He says, we want to meet you with them. And we had a very nice conversation. And he said to me, listen, my father had a cardiac arrest. He was 52 years old. And we waited for almost an hour in East Jerusalem for an ambulance to come. It was bad times. They had Intifada going on. So it was very, very hard for ambulances to come in. Police escort needed to come with the ambulance. He says, I was just there looking at my father, I didn't know what to do. And he just died in front of my eyes. If I could have saved him, I wish I could have saved him. I couldn't save him, but I promised myself that I would learn how to save lives. And I want to save lives of everyone who needs me. I want to be a Hatzalah volunteer, he says. Hatzalah means save, actually. And he says, I want to be a save, like a rescue volunteer. I want to be part of your organization. He says, I wish someone came to save him. We didn't have any volunteers in my community. So I thought about it. I said, when I started this when I was 16 and a half years old, it wasn't about saving Jews. It was about saving people. And I said to him, I would love to have you in, but in one condition. You bring 25 of your friends and we'll do a course. We'll train all of you. It takes about 6 months to train you. We're going to make you an EMT, or you and your friends, and you're going to join us as one organization. And that's when really this organization became United Hatzalah, which you see on I have my camera upside down, so you see it's United Hatzalah, which is really uniting people together in this mission of saving lives. And it started from a small vision of getting people to save in my community, and just started spreading like fire. And years later, I just realized that we had more and more people from communities I never imagined that will be part of us. And everywhere I go around the country and I see volunteers saving lives. And I just have to share this funny story I had with Muhammad one day, just to see Muhammad. I had a friend, Mark Gerson. He became our chairman of the board. He's the biggest supporter of the organization. Him and Rabbi Erica Gerson from New York, donated an ambicycle. Him and his wife donated an ambicycle to United Hatzalah in honor of their rabbi. And they had Rabbi Matt Gortz from New Jersey. They donated an ambicycle, and it was driving around Jerusalem with Muhammad. And one day he gets a call. He was supposed to be home for Ramadan, in the end of Ramadan, to help his wife, and he was rushing home, and then he gets a call of a woman giving birth nearby in a gas station. And he turns around and he goes into the gas station, and he sees this woman in a car, and he stops his ambicycle. He takes all the medical equipment in the back, and he runs over to her, and the husband is a rabbi with a long beard and a big yarmulke and a payas, and he starts screaming, "Save my wife, she's giving birth. And he looks over and he sees the woman giving birth, and he looks down and he sees the baby stuck with the umbilical cord around the neck. And he lays down the woman with the seat down, and he's working to rescue this baby who's choking. And he got there just on time to release the baby's umbilical cord, the woman's umbilical cord, and let the baby out. So the umbilical cord was released, and the baby just flew out. And the husband saw that, and he saw the baby coming out completely purple, and he thought the baby died, and he fainted. The husband fainted, and Muhammad's treating the baby now, giving oxygen to the baby and taking care of the baby. Another volunteer who showed up was helping the husband, and a third one comes and treating the wife. So it became a multi-casualty incident. And while Muhammad's treating the baby, the husband woke up. First thing he says, "What's with the baby? Is the baby okay?" The baby's okay. They said, "Yes, the baby's okay. He's a baby boy. He had a baby boy, Mazel Tov. He's treated, everything's okay." And he gets up and he says, "Who's the man who treated my boy? Who's the volunteer and saved my wife, my baby?" And they tell him, "This is the man." And he runs over and he starts hugging Muhammad. This rabbi's hugging him, and he says, "You're like my Messiah. You saved my son. You're Mashiach. You're like my Mashiach." And he's like kissing him and hugging him. And he says, "Listen, next week I want you to come to the bris of my son. I want you to be the sandik, the godfather of my son." And Muhammad says, "Listen, I'm very honored. Thank you very, very much. But I'm actually on a rush home. I'm not interested in any honors. I'm very busy. We don't get any gifts in United Hatzalah. We do it for free. This is a big gift for me." He says, No, I must give it to you." He says, "You know what? We usually don't get gifts, but if you really insist, I'm late home. Send me a little bouquet of flowers to my wife and a little note, 'I saved your son.' That's enough for me. A little bouquet of flowers is enough." He said, No. I see you're a very humble man. Not only I want to give you the sandak, the godfather, I want to name my son after you. I want my son to be a tzaddik like you, a righteous man." And Muhammad realized this guy doesn't know who he's talking to. So he says, "Listen, no, a little bouquet of flowers would be fine with me. Trust me. You don't want my name. Trust me. Just give me the flowers. Send a little note to my wife. A little bouquet is enough for me." So he says, No, I insist. Give me a name. I want to name my son after you. And he's fighting with him. And Muhammad says that he realized it's not going to get out of this situation. And he says to him, I'll tell you the truth. United Hatzalah is made out of volunteers from all sectors. By chance, you got a volunteer who's a Muslim. I'm Muslim, I'm Arab, and I got to your son, and I saved him, and my name is Muhammad. I'm not sure your son's going to do so well in yeshiva with the name Muhammad. Maybe just send me the small bouquet of flowers. So he looks at him and he says, his eyes open up, lights up, and he says to him, Muhammad, what's your address? I want to send you a huge bouquet of flowers. And when I heard that story, I said, we succeeded in Israel. At United Hatzalah, we have volunteers who are made from every type of volunteer. We have plumbers, we have lawyers, we have engineers, we have hedge fund managers, we have taxi drivers, Jews, Muslims, men and women, from all sectors of Judaism, from every other sector in Israel joined in. And now we have 6,500 volunteers and saving lives throughout Israel. We go out to almost 2,000 emergencies a day. We get there an average of less than 3 minutes to emergencies. We responded to almost 5 million emergencies since we started. And it's growing from day to day. More and more people want to join. We give every single person that joins us the medical training that they need. We give them the equipment they need. We give them defibrillators. Many of the defibrillators were donated by the Sarasota-Manatee Federation. And we actually do a lot of more activity, which I'll tell you about in a second. But I want to go into a personal matter, in a personal story. You know, this organization was my dream. This was my passion. My children joined in. My wife joined in. They're all committed. Every single one of them are volunteers, besides my youngest 12-year-old. But everyone else, I have 5 kids. They all love Hatzalah, and this is their life. Friday night, they fight over who's going to go out to the emergency in the building near us. Last week, we had a call about a 40-year-old man. He had a cardiac arrest. He had COVID a few days before, and unfortunately, the COVID hit his heart. And they did CPR on him in his house, in front of his children. He had a 9-year-old child, he had a 12-year-old child, and they saw us doing, our children, my kids were doing CPR on my neighbor during Shabbat dinner. And they literally, all my kids ran out. I stayed home because I'm already at Alta Kakra, like they say. And they are incredible EMTs and medics. And other volunteers joined in, and they got his heartbeat back with a defibrillator. But this young man, 48 years old, did not make it, and he died in the hospital because of COVID. And this reminds me what I went through just a year ago, almost a year ago. I was actually traveling to Miami a year ago in March. I was traveling around the world. I was in Washington for APAC. And a couple of days after, I was in London. I flew from London to Miami. I fly like crazy. And I ended up in Miami. And a couple of days when I was in Miami, I did not feel well. I had fever. Something was wrong. And I right away realized, you know what? No one knew about COVID then. No one knew about the symptoms enough. And I just had a suspicion something is wrong. They just announced that some people in New York were sick, a few people in New Rochelle. I really got scared that, God forbid, I'm sick and I could get other people sick. I just locked myself in an apartment. And 4 days later, I couldn't breathe anymore. And you can't breathe, meaning I wasn't able to breathe. I was breathing, but the oxygen was not connecting into my body. And I got to the hospital 4 days later, into the University of Miami, and the doctor said he must put me in a ventilator and induce me into a coma. My oxygen level was terrible. My lungs were doing very bad. So this was Friday afternoon, and the doctor said I have to go on a ventilator and be induced into coma. And I was like petrified. This was it. And I asked the doctor, what's my chances of survival? He couldn't tell me. And I asked him, tell me the truth. What's going on in Europe, in Spain, and Italy? He says, in your condition, 5% of the people survive. I had to call my wife and kids and say goodbye to them. I literally said goodbye to my children. I knew I'm not going to make it. This was like the beginning of the catastrophe. And I thought you know what? No one knows anything about it. No medicines are there. And I was on a coma for a month. I was 1 month on a ventilator, and people all around America were helping me, praying for me, doing good deeds for me. People all around Israel and Europe and other countries around the world, people were hoping I would survive. I was fighting for my life, but everyone else was really praying for me and doing good deeds. And somehow, a day after Passover, I woke up, and the doctors woke me up in the hospital. I couldn't believe I'm alive. I couldn't believe I was in Miami. I forgot altogether I was in Miami. I thought I was somewhere else. And I was depressed. And they wanted to really make my spirits go up, but I was so depressed because the way I woke up, I was 36 pounds less. I was in a diaper. I couldn't move. I was like with pipes on my nose for feeding me. And I was like in such a bad situation. And I got a phone call from Israel, and I answered it, and I couldn't even talk. And they said, Eli, you have no idea what United Hatzalah is doing. You said before you were intubated, you asked everyone to do a good deed in honor of you to be saved. I asked everyone to do chesed, to do a good deed, to do charity, to do good things for your neighbor and good things for older people who are stuck now in their homes. They can't leave. And we went ahead and we started this whole project. Besides emergency calls and helping people in COVID and everything else, we started helping people, humanitarian help for elderly people over a certain age that were locked down. They couldn't leave their home. The government did not let anyone over, I think it was 70 or 60, like certain age, they didn't let anyone out. And these people couldn't go shopping. They couldn't get their oxygen or medicine or whatever it was. So I said to them, I'm amazed you did this. They said, yeah, we went out to tens of thousands of humanitarian help throughout Israel. I said, give me one story that will elevate my soul. I wanted to get some motivation to get up. And they told me that this man who called me up, Eli Pollack, he said, listen, a lady called us 5 minutes before Passover, and she said, I need candles to light for Passover. Please send me candles. I have no candles to light for Passover. I need candles. So they said, you need anything else? She said, no, just send me candles. So they sent out the call. The first volunteer who picked up the call, we have a technology that knows how to locate the closest volunteer to every emergency, and the Moskowitz Life Compass. And this volunteer by the name of Ibrahim Ayuti picked up the call. Ibrahim is a Muslim volunteer of United Hatzalah living in Jaffa. He drove over with an ambucycle to a little supermarket, and he bought the candles, and he bought her also flowers. And he drove over to this woman's house, the top floor of a building in Bat Yam. He knocks on the door. This lady opens the door. She sees him with the orange vest. She says, did you bring the candles? Did you give me candles? He says, yes. And he gave her the flowers and the candles, and he said, happy Chag. Chag Sameach, he said to her. And she said to him, you saved my life. You saved my life. And he says, really? I saved your life? She said, yes, saved my life. She ran over to set up the candles. And he said to her, could I stay with you for a couple of minutes just to spend some time with you? He saw she was very lonely. And she said, go back to your family and spend some time with your family for Passover and for the Seder. He said, no, I'm not Jewish. I want to spend time with you. And he spent 2.5 hours with her. And she told him her life story. She grew up in Europe. She was in the concentration camps. She told him the whole story. And then he said to her, why did you say I saved your life? I just brought you over the candles. So she said to him, you should just know, when I was a child, I never missed a day, a Shabbat or a holiday to light candles with my mother. And then when Holocaust started and my mother was transported and killed by the Nazis, murdered by the Nazis, I was in a camp, a young girl, and I never missed a week by lighting something, a piece of wood, a piece of dried potato peel, or paper, just to light a candle every Shabbat, every holiday, even Passover. And I grew up, and then I was saved, thank God. And I came to Israel, and I'm living alone now in Israel now during the worst time Israel suffered from COVID now. The whole country shut down. I couldn't go shopping. And I light 15 candles every Shabbat for members of my family who were murdered by the Nazis. And I realized I don't have enough candles to light this holiday. And I saw on television, they have a number. And I said, if I have to call Hatzalah, United Hatzalah, to get candles, because if I don't have candles, and I have to light a piece of paper again for a memory of my family, that means my life is over. This is my last day I'm living. She said, I'm 90 years old. I was so sad. And I said, I wish someone comes to give me the candles. And you came and you brought me the candles and you saved my life. When I heard that story of Ibrahim Ayuti, who was an incredible volunteer of United Hatzalah, one of 6,500 volunteers, I said, this is it. I have enough strength to get up and come back to Israel. The picture you see behind me, my screenshot behind me on the Zoom, is when I came back landing in Israel. The airport was shut. It was shut down, the airport. And I was lucky enough that I was able to come back to Israel thanks to an incredible woman, Dr. Miriam Adelson, who flew me back to Israel. I couldn't get back to Israel. And when I landed, these volunteers were waiting for me. Men and women, Jews and Muslims, religious and secular, were waiting for me in the airport while I was landing in Israel. And sharing this story in these times when it's hard for everyone, we're just waiting to get back to normal life. We want to kiss and hug our children and grandchildren, and some of us have grandchildren, great-grandchildren. We can't wait to go back to normal life, but we need hope. And this is a story of hope. I personally literally almost gave up I gave up before, when I knew I'm like, I have no oxygen, I thought I'm over. And look at me today, 2 o'clock, 10 to 3 in the morning, I'm telling you my story. The Jewish Federation of Sarasota-Manatee, United Hatzalah. This is incredible, sharing my story with you. And I'm honored because you are supporting the Federation, supporting the good causes of the Federation, supporting the community, supporting Israel, supporting United Hatzalah. I can't thank you enough for everything you do. And I can't wait to meet you personally in Israel. You donated over the years to United Hatzalah, ambucycles, people in your community donated stuff, ambulances and equipment. We have now 50 ambulances in Israel giving free service to everyone. Holocaust survivors who need to go get vaccines, who can't go in a regular car. We send an ambulance together with the claims conference. We're doing this. You all heard of the claims conference. We're doing it together with them to transport these people to get a vaccine and transport them back. Last week, a lady asked us if we could take her to the beach to see the beach. She didn't see the ocean for a year. She was stuck at home. After we gave her the vaccine, we took her to the beach in Tel Aviv and showed her the beach. And this is the beautiful part about United Hatzalah. So I just want to thank you all for supporting this great organization and great other organizations in Israel and in Florida. And I wish you only the best. And thank you so much for being part of this. See you soon in Israel.
Wow, Eli, thank you so much for being here. We're so lucky to have had you speak in the wee hours of the morning for you and live from Israel. Thank you for all of the work that you do. And we're so glad that you're here to tell your coronavirus story. To our community, thank you for joining us for our 2021 community lecture. And don't forget to get your tickets for the Jewish Film Festival starting next week. Visit our website for more information, jfedsrq.org. Have a wonderful evening, Eli.
I just want to share one more thing. Mm-hmm. I hope you all come visit us at United Hatzalah in Israel. And you could really, when you come, it's going to be open. Israel's going to be open soon. Everything's going to be over. 70% of Israel is almost vaccinated. Like within 3 weeks, 70% of Israel is vaccinated. Sorry, my head is not working anymore. So come visit us, and you could go on our website too if you don't mind. I'll share israelrescue.org, and we have you go on and send us an email. You come to visit us, and I'll host you by us and give you a ride on the ambucycle. It's israelrescue.org, and you can learn more about us. So thank you so much, and see you soon in Israel.
Go get some sleep. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening, everyone.